Yo, howdy, hey, y'all. Another season down, and another deck that just went absolutely crazy. We got a fan favorite staple for you here today, Etali, Primal, Conqueror. It's a dinosaur. It's a big scary dinosaur. This was so much fun this season. I had an absolute blast with this deck, even though it had some hiccups and some bumps at times, but it still just dominated at times, including a 22 game win streak on the last day of the July season. I know, it's almost hard to believe myself that I could accomplish such a feat as a mediocre Magic player, but it did happen. It's recorded. You can go check that out if you don't take my word for it. But in this video, we're going to go over the deck list in full. All right, we're going to get right into it here, starting with the dinosaur itself. Big chunky Chunk-a-Monk Etali Primal Conqueror. This is a legendary creature, Elder Dinosaur for 5 red. It has trample, but more importantly, it has when Etali enters, each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. You may cast any number of spells from among the non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana cost. One of the most terrifying effects in all of Magic. And then for 9 and Phyrexian green mana, that can be paid with either 2 life or 1 green pip, you can transform Etali, activate only as a sorcery, into Etali Primal Sickness, a Phyrexian Elder Dinosaur that has trample indestructible, and whenever Etali deals combat damage to a player, they get that many poison counters. You don't see transformed Etali quite as much, but it's still very powerful. I mean, it's a one-shot if it connects cleanly, and we got a few cards in here that actually kind of maximizes the Phyrexian Etali even more than regular Etali, but we'll get to those when we get to them. We're going to start from the very bottom up all the way to the top. I'm going down the list on every single card, starting with Chromox. Yes, a CDH staple you know and love. It's Chromox for 0 mana. It's an artifact that when it enters, you can exile a non-artifact, non-land card from your hand, tap it, add 1 mana of any of the exiled card's colors. A staple of ramp. It's free ramp. You can play this on turn 1. Very good card to just get your ramp going. You're going to need a lot of ramp with Etali. A 7 mana commander, not the easiest to get to the fastest, and there is the potential for getting blown out. So you definitely want a lot of ramp with your Etali. And then we got Gamble. This is a 1 red mana sorcery. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, discard a card at random, and then shuffle. I would argue this is like the best situational tutor in the game. I really would argue that. It's 1 red pip to search for any card. So it's got the same effect as a demonic tutor, but for 1 less mana. I say situational, though, because you do have to discard a card at random, and if you go and tutor for something with only like 2 or 3 cards in your hand, there's a good chance you're just going to discard the card that you tutored for. So you really want to use Gamble when you have a full hand, or as many cards in your hand as possible. But if you have 5, 6, or 7 cards in your hand, then Gamble, it's a very good tutor. We got Lightning Bolt. This is a 1 red mana instant that deals 3 damage to any target. This deck is pretty light on removal for a high-powered deck. But you still want some. This is mainly to deal with your Drannith Magistrates. Cards that will keep you from ever even playing Etali or casting Etali spells from Etali's effect. So that's kind of what the bolt is for, is to get rid of those pesky Drannith Magistrates. It's also just good to hit a mana dork if you need to ramp faster than than your opponent. So there's Lightning Bolt. We got Stark Industries Executive, a 1 red mana creature. You can pay 2 and tap it to create a treasure token. More ramp. It's also a red permanent to go with Bloom Tender, so Bloom Tender can tap for those, for the red mana as well. Strike It Rich, another red mana sorcery. It creates treasure token. That's all it does. It just creates a treasure token. Allosaurus Shepherd, our first protection piece. This is a green mana creature, elf shaman that cannot be countered, which is very important for your Etali plays. You do not want them to get shut down by the blue meta. So this cannot be countered. Green spells you control can't be countered. And that's creatures, tutors, enchantment, anything green. Allosaurus says, no, you degenerate blue player, you will not counter this spell. And then for 4 green until end of turn, each elf you control has base power and toughness 5/5 and becomes a dinosaur in addition to its other creature types. Not too often we're using that ability, but it can come in handy. You can do that at instant speed, make your elves 5/5s. Birds of Paradise, arguably the best mana dork in the game. I don't love Birds of Paradise. I know, that's crazy to say, but it's often just like such a target, just a stereotypical target that people want to get rid of as fast as possible. It just never sticks around very long. It is a 1 green pip creature bird that has flying, and you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color, 0/1 power toughness. But this is a staple for sure. Good card. I just think it's a little bit too targeted for my liking. Crop Rotation. This is a 1 green pip instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a land, search your library for a land card, put that card onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. This is mainly to go get either Ancient Tomb or Cavern of Souls, and we'll go over those cards when we get to the land base. Depending on the deck we're playing against, we want Ancient Tomb if we need to ramp faster than other turbo ramp decks, and we need Cavern of Souls in case we're playing Control to keep our Etali from getting counterspelled. Delighted Halfling. This is a green mana creature halfling citizen. It taps for a colorless mana, but it will also tap 1 mana of any color to cast a legendary spell, and then that spell can't be countered. So more counter hate, more anti-counterspell synergy. You'll see this card in a lot of high-powered decks too to keep your stuff from getting countered. Gene Pollinator, a green pip artifact creature robot insect. It taps, and then if you tap it and tap an untapped permanent you control, you can add 1 mana of any color. More ramp, just more ramp. Search for the Frozen Esper, or Nature's Claim would be the original card. I don't know what art this is, to be honest. Maybe Final Fantasy, I'm not sure, but it is an instant to destroy target artifact or enchantment. Its controller gains 4 life. There's probably more artifact removal, at least like on the cards themselves, than any other removal, and that is to deal with like the Vexing Baubles. This is mainly to get rid of the stacks pieces that make your Etali a lot harder to cast or just unable to cast. Sylvan Safekeeper. This is a green mana creature human wizard that you can sack a land, and then target creature you control gains Shroud until end of turn. Very strong ability to protect stuff on your board. It does come at the cost of sacking a land, but ideally you have this like in the mid game or even later game. They go to like target something that you need to win on the next turn. You just sack a land, your creature gets Shroud, and then their target spell fizzles. So Tamiyo's Safekeeping, another good protection card. This is a 1 green pip instant. Target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. You gain 2 life. So again, that's not just target creature, that's target permanent. So if they target your artifacts, your ramp artifacts, whatever it is, your signet, your panharmonicon, Tamiyo Safekeeping says, nope, that thing gets hexproof and indestructible. Veil of Summer. I probably have went back and forth on this card more than any other card in the deck. You can see it's not legal in a bunch of formats that very few people play. But it is an instant. Draw a card if an opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn. Spells you control can't be countered this turn. You and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and from black until end of turn. Really good card, to be honest, if you're playing against black or blue. If you're not playing against black or blue, it's a dead card. The higher up you get in the queues, it's very likely you're going to be playing a lot more black and blue. I think those are probably the best colors. They give you the well-rounded spectrum of effects, counterspell, control synergies with blue, and then you have like ramp and really broken cheating effects with black. You're going to run into a lot of black and blue. And then this card made the difference in a number of games enough that I was like, yeah, it's worth its slot. It's good enough. You play this like on top of a counterspell. It will protect your thing underneath the counterspell. It will protect your permanents on board. It will even protect you. You also get the hexproof from blue and black. So if they target you with like an edict effect or like a River's Rebuke, something like that, Veil of Summer says, no, that does not work because I have hexproof as well as my permanent. So very good card, and it looks cool. Isn't that cool looking? That's just cool. It's like an elf thing that's just like, hey, summer is here. It is here, and the dark winter has come and gone, and now it is summer. All right, Worldly Tutor. This is a green pip instant. Search your library for a creature card, reveal it, then shuffle, and put the card on top. Pretty to the point tutor. This will just put a creature card on top. I really like to use this to put one of my Haymaker creatures on top before I get an Etali trigger, and then Etali will just flip that top card right off the top. It's probably going to be Emrakul, given the choice. But yeah, that's kind of how I like this. But it's also just good to tutor something up that you need for ramp, like a Badger Mole or a Dockside. Not a lot of tutors in this deck too, actually, which is even crazier. I think Gamble and Worldly Tutor are the only ones that made the cut. I played with Finale of Devastation for a while. Very good tutor too. But I was finding just kind of whiffing on it with Etali a little too much for my liking. Peter Parker's Camera. I love this card. It is a 1 generic mana artifact. It enters with 3 film counters on it. You can pay 2 and tap it to remove a film counter from this artifact. Copy target activated or triggered ability that you control. Or activated or triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. This is for Etali redundancy. So ideally you cast Etali, you've got 2 extra mana, you have Peter Parker's Camera, you tap it, and then you can copy Etali's triggered ability. Very powerful effect for only 3 mana. And it might not even be Etali's. There's other very powerful triggered effects too that just make this such a good include. Really like this card. It's hard not to put this card in a lot of decks because it's that strong to copy your activated and triggered abilities. So, Springleaf Drum. This is a 1 generic mana artifact that taps and taps an untapped creature you control to add 1 mana of any color. So it's just more ramp. It's just another ramp card. All right, we're moving into the 2 mana slot now. We've got Abrade. This is 1 generic red pip instant. Choose 1. It deals 3 damage to target creature or destroy target artifact. Again, this is kind of the same thing we need it for as like the Nature's Claim or the Lightning Bolt. We can deal 3 damage to a pesky Magistrate, or you could blow up a Vexing Bauble, an artifact that's kind of slowing you down. So I think this is a very good effect for its rate, only 2 mana. The Charming Scoundrel. This is a creature, human rogue, 1 generic red pip that has haste, and when it enters, choose 1, discard a card, then draw a card, create a treasure token, create a Wicked Roll token, attached to target creature you control. And she is quite the scoundrel indeed. Look at her. It looks just like my ex, ready to lead me down a dark hole of sadness and suffering here, but she really helps Etali out a lot. I'm usually going to use that create a treasure token effect. That's what I really want it for. Dockside Extortionist. And we know this is a banned card now. I go back and forth. I don't feel like it should be, but I kind of understand why it is. Very broken with loop effects here, but I love this card. It's so much fun. So much fun and great in Etali. This is a 1 generic red pip creature goblin pirate. When it enters, create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. And obviously not quite as good as 4-player tabletop. Not that you can play it there anymore anyway, unless you rule 0 it in. But this, in a 4-player pod, I can see why people think it's broken, because you will get the treasures for 3 other players' artifacts and enchantments. One-on-one, you just get whatever your opponent has. So I'm usually only getting 1 to 2 treasures out of this if I'm playing it on curve, but it can also just be game-breaking later in the game too if you're playing against enchantment focused decks. This thing can just give you 8, 9, 10 treasures on the turn that it comes down. And then when you copy Dockside too, it gets really out of hand. So Dockside Extortionist, I would absolutely put this card in any Etali deck if it were still legal on tabletop. Hexing Squelcher. This is a 1 red pip creature goblin sorcerer. This spell can't be countered. It has ward, pay 2 life. Spells you control can't be countered. Other creatures you control have ward, pay 2 life. This was out of the Lorwyn Eclipse set, and it might be one of the best cards out of the set. You will absolutely see this in CDH decks. A very powerful effect. The one, it can itself be countered, but then it gives all of your spells you control can't be countered. So creatures, tutors, sorceries, no matter what you cast, it cannot be countered with Hexing Squelcher. Molten Duplication, our first copy sorcery, a 1 and red pip sorcery. Create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next instead. This is primarily for Etali redundancy. You want copy effects to hit on so you can keep spinning with Etali, but it does pair with some other cards too that we'll get to when we get to it. But yes, and for 1 and a red, this is probably the cheapest copy effect in the deck, maybe even in red. I can't think of a cheaper one off the top of my head. Very, very powerful card with Etali. Molten Duplication. Pyretic Ritual. This is a 1 red pip instant that adds 3 red pips to your mana pool. I started kind of leaning more towards ritual effects than mana dorks, or at least like having an even balance of them, because I found that my creatures were getting removed so often, whether it's board wipes or an Elish Norn or just traditional targeting. It's kind of hard to keep creatures around in this day and age of Magic. The rituals kind of help you negate that some. Spider-Punk. This is a 1 generic red pip legendary creature spider human hero that has Riot, which means a creature with Riot enters with your choice of a +1/+1 counter, or it has haste. Other spiders you control have Riot. Pointless for this deck because we don't have other spiders, but spells and abilities can't be countered, and damage can't be prevented. This is one of those cards that's actually better 1v1 than it is in 4-player, because it's not just your spells and abilities that can't be countered. This would apply to your opponents as well. So if you have this card out, nobody's spells or abilities can be countered. Not yours, not your opponents, and that can be kind of dangerous in a 4-player pod. But with the Etali game plan, I'm not trying to counter anything. I mean, there's not much of that in this deck, in a Gruul deck. So it's pretty good for the purposes of kind of Squelcher redundancy. It keeps all spells and abilities from being countered. So that means Etali's triggered ability can't be countered, and you'll run into that at times too, where they don't counter the Etali, but they counter the triggered ability. Spider-Punk says, nope, that ability can't be countered. So I think it's a pretty good card. Return the Favor. This is a red spree card. Instant, and spree is you can choose one or more additional costs. You can, for generic mana, you can copy target instant spells, sorcery spell, activated ability, or triggered ability, and then choose new targets for the copy. And then you can also, for an additional one colorless, change the target of target spell or ability with a single target. So that's a deflecting swat right there. That bottom one, change the target of target spell or ability. And then the top one, obviously, Etali redundancy. You can copy the triggered ability. You can copy instants and sorceries. You can also use this on your opponent's stuff. You can actually target their instant, sorcery, activated, or triggered abilities. And I did have a game where that actually won me the game against a dungeon, a Mad Mage dungeon style deck. And then you can spree it out and get all those effects if you want. You can copy something and then also change the target of the original spell that was cast for you to return the favor. I really like this card. I think this card is really good in the right situation. Badger Mole Cub. Oh yes, the feared cub. This is a broken card for 1 and a green pip creature, Badger Mole. When this creature enters Earthbend 1, and if you don't know what Earthbend is, you can target a land to become a land creature with haste. You put 1/1/1 counter on it. When it dies or is put into exile, return it to the battlefield tapped. And then whenever you tap a creature for mana, add an additional green mana. A lot of strong feelings about this cute little cub, but look at him, he's just a cute little cub. He's a little badger mole. Very feared card despite his cute demeanor here. Maybe the best ramp card ever. I might just go out on a limb there and say that. Like, this thing ends games on turn 2, turn 3, because it just doubles your mana for mana dorks, puts you at such an advantage over your opponent's ramp that it is just a brutal card that is usually kill on sight. You cannot let your opponent keep a Badger Mole around. More than worth putting in to ramp out very heavy, very fast. Bloom Tender. This is a 1 generic green pip creature elf druid that has Vivid, and it taps, and you can add, for each color among permanents you control, add 1 mana of that color. This is the best in 5-color decks because you can tap for Wooburg, but it's still even good in dual-colored decks because you can tap it for a green and a red, which gives you mana fixing, gives you access to colors that you need. Cryptolith Rite. This is an enchantment, 1 and a green, that gives your creatures the ability to tap for 1 mana of any color. I was actually in the process of subbing this out for Enduring Vitality. I think that's a little bit better of a card that does kind of the same thing. But it's still a really good card that can turn all of your creatures into mana dorks, not just your green ones. So really good to help you ramp out and keep that flow of mana going for some of your bigger costed stuff. Destiny Spinner. 1 generic green pip enchantment creature human. Creature and enchantment spells you control can't be countered. And then it has a second effect that I don't think I ever used in this deck. For 3 and a green, target land you control becomes an XX elemental creature with trample and haste until end of turn, where X is the number of enchantments you control. It's still a land. And yeah, we have, a number of enchantments in here. There's not a ton. So like I said, almost never used it for its second effect, but the first one is so strong, it's more than worth it. Creature and enchantment spells you control can't be countered. Green is very strong at keeping your creature spells from not being countered. but it doesn't have a lot of like other stuff outside of creatures can't be countered, and the enchantments that we do have are so important to our game plan. This is just a vital card to make sure those enchantments stick and get on the board to do stuff. Green Frog Spirit that has Death Touch, and it taps to add 1 mana of any color. You can pay 2 to give it reach until end of turn. Very effective against flyers because you can activate that at instant speed, and then you have something with Death Touch that has reach to block a mean old flyer. Heroic Intervention, one of the best green protection cards for 1 and a green instant. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. And with a deck that's a little bit vulnerable to board wipes, this is paramount that you have protection like this to protect your entire board and not just, a couple permanents or a single permanent. So Heroic Intervention. Love this card. One of my favorite instants. Elysian Caryatid. I do not know how to say that word, so if somebody does know how, drop it in the comments. Ask Siri, because I have no idea. We'll call it the Elysian Sea. 1 and a green creature plant that taps for 1 mana of any color. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, add 2 mana of any one color instead. Another mana dork, but potentially an even better mana dork, because we'll probably have a creature with power 4 or greater, so we'll be able to tap it for 2. Malevolent Rumble. This is a 1 green sorcery, 1 generic green that is. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a permanent card from among them into your hand, put the rest into your graveyard. Create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token with sack this token, add colorless mana. This is a good card. I found this to be better and better as time went on, because it's ramp, because it will make this Eldrazi spawn that you can tap for colorless, but it will also be card advantage to look at those top 4 and then put a current permanent into your hand. So you have the potential to actually get a land off of this and the Eldrazi spawn. So if you miss your land drop, you just kind of ramped by 2 instead of 1. I really found this to be pretty helpful as time went on. Paradise Druid, 1 green pip creature elf druid that has hexproof as long as it's untapped. Add 1 mana of any color. I found this to be one of my favorite mana dorks too, because of that hexproof ability. So much my mana dorks are getting bolted, they're getting removed. This has hexproof as long as it's untapped. So when you tap it for the mana, it does lose the hexproof, but it will kind of help you like stave off some of those targeting effects to get to where you use it and then you don't care if it gets removed after because you have a big giant dinosaur or an Eldrazi. So really like Paradise Druid. Goblin Anarchomancer. This is a red-green goblin shaman creature. Each spell you cast that's red or green costs 1 less to cast. So it is a spell reducer. It reduces the cost of your red and green spells. Very effective when you got some of these bigger effects here. Etali would be 6. Some of our other bigger red-green cards that we'll get to, it reduces their cost, and that is pretty important when you have a finisher in hand. Ruby Daring Tracker. This is a red-green legendary creature human scout that has haste. Whenever Ruby attacks while you control a creature with power 4 or greater, Ruby gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and then it can tap for either a red or green mana. That first effect, the +2/+2, and kind of trivial, not the most important thing. The main thing is this is a mana dork with haste. So when Ruby comes down, you can, on that turn, tap it for a red or green mana. And some of my favorite plays are to go like, land Ruby, and then with Ruby's ability, play one of the 1 mana ramp cards, like a Strike It Rich or you know, the artifact, the spring leaf, or the camera, whatever it is. It actually makes a huge difference to being able to tap that on the turn it comes down. Arcane Signet, 2 generic mana artifact that adds 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. It's just ramp. You know what this card does if you play the game. Told you need as much ramp as you can possibly squeeze in here without compromising the haymakers to finish the game. So, Cursed Mirror. This is a 2 generic red pip artifact. It taps for a red mana, but when it enters, you may have it become a copy of any creature on the battlefield until end of turn, except it has haste. Man, is this a good copy effect, because you can copy your opponent's stuff, you can copy an Etali once it's on board, and then it will just turn back into an artifact that you can tap for red mana. Had a game where I copied an opponent's Emrakul, except mine had haste, so I could attack with it, trigger the Annihilator on that turn, and then ended up winning the game by copying their Emrakul. So that's probably a lesson in why maybe you don't put every single broken Eldrazi in your deck, because someone might copy it or steal it. Deflecting Swat, not legal in Brawl, but it is in competitive Brawl. 2 generic red pip instant. If you control a commander, you may cast this spell without paying its mana cost. Choose new targets for target spell or ability. Very powerful effect. You're getting targeted, Etali gets targeted, or one of your other things gets targeted. You can cast Deflecting Swat, and you just swat their spell down, and then redirect it back to a better target. You can also even use this, like, if they target one of their things, that's like a buff spell or a protection spell, then you can swat it to one of your things. Electro Duplicate, 2 generic red pip sorcery. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except it has haste, and at the beginning of the end step, sacrifice this token. It has flashback, so for 2 red, you can cast it from your graveyard. So really, this is potentially 2 copy spells on 1 card, because you can create the token with the first one in your hand, and then flash it back later for 2 red. Goblin Matron, 2 red creature goblin. When this creature enters, you may search your library for a goblin card, reveal that card, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. This is one you might not see in a high-powered deck, and I think that's a mistake. This is an uncommon too, by the way. It's not a rare, it's not a mythic. This is an uncommon Goblin Tutor. Pretty narrow if you're not playing like a Goblin Tribal, but the goblins in the deck are Dockside, Hexing Squelcher, and Squee the Immortal, which are like 3 of the most important cards to the deck's game plan. So this Goblin Tutor has actually won me multiple games by going and getting the goblin that I need, depending on the deck that I'm playing against. It was absolutely worth its slot. It's worth its bones, and very, very good, despite only having 3 goblins in the deck. They just happen to be 3 of the best goblins. Heat Shimmer. This is a 2 red sorcery. Create a token that's a copy of target creature, except it has haste, and at the beginning of the end step, exile this token. Another copy effect. Ideally, we want to use it for Etali. But there is also some other applications to our copy sorceries other than Etali. Jessica's Will. This is a red game changer, and it is one of the most powerful game changers. I love this card. This has to go in any high-powered red deck, no exceptions. Jessica's Will, love this card. For 2 and a red sorcery, choose one. If you control a commander, though, as you cast this, you may choose both. Instead, add red for each card in target opponent's hand. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. This has enabled turn 2, turn 3 Etalis like no other card in the deck. If your opponent's playing it safe, cards close to the chest, and they've got a full grip, you Jessica's Will. You get red mana for all the cards in their hand. But if I get this off of an Etali too, it's card advantage, because I get ramp and the top 3 cards in my library. Banger card. Absolutely awesome card you have to have in your red decks. Lelia, the Blade Reforged. This is a 2 red legendary creature spirit warrior. It has haste, and when Lelia attacks, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from your library and or graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on Lelia. This was a little bit later of an include. I didn't put this in until like the last few days of the season, and I really wish I would have put this in earlier. It's card advantage 1. Because you'll be able to attack on the turn that Lelia comes down, and then it exiles the top card. And in a deck that kind of ran into a lot of hurdles with card advantage at times, this was a great include that will just keep you consistently getting cards to be able to play. But also, it's very synergistic with Etali, because Etali puts the cards in exile that it flips, and so those cards that Etali exiles will put the +1/+1 counter on Lelia. I had a couple games where I just kept beating with Lelia and kept exiling cards, and then Lelia just gets bigger than Etali with its +1/+1 counters, and is just a huge beater that gives you card advantage. So really synergistic with Etali. Like this card. And speaking of liking, if you like this kind of content and Magic content and just gaming related videos, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. That's all the support I could ask for. I'm not asking for your money or memberships or anything like that. But these videos do take quite a bit of time and editing and effort, but I do it for the love of the game. So if you like it, find some kind of value out of it, or just like watching me crash out over Magic the Gathering, then show your support. Hit that like and subscribe button. All right, back to the deck list. Seething Song. This is a 2 red instant that adds 5 red pips to your mana pool. It's ramp. It's ramp for our ramp. We got 3 red mana on turn 2 or turn 3. We hit the Seething Song, and that often enables a really fast Etali play. Dual Caster Mage for 1 red, a creature human wizard that has flash, and when it enters, copy target instant or sorcery. You may choose new targets for the copy. This is one of the undercover win cons of the deck. Everybody's so worried about Etali and stopping Etali, but then Dual Caster comes in, and I've hit this quite a few times. I'll clip it in the B-roll for this video. So you have a copy effect like Heat Shimmer. You cast the Heat Shimmer to copy something that's already on board. You flash in the Dual Caster Mage, and then Dual Caster Mage will copy that Heat Shimmer, and then you target the now on the board Dual Caster Mage. You get another Dual Caster Mage that comes in, copies the Heat Shimmer. You have an infinite loop where you will have as many Dual Caster Mages as you can copy before your timer runs out. Swing in. They all have haste too because of Red's copy effects. And then you can swing in with as many mages as it takes to kill your opponent. Flare of Duplication. This is a 1 red instant. You may sack a non-token red creature rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Copy target instant or sorcery. You may choose new targets for the copy. Usually this is being used to copy our copy sorceries like Heat Shimmer, Molten Duplication. But the real banger is you can cast it for free by sacking a non-token red creature. So if you don't really need your like Stark Industries executive anymore, you don't really need like the Anarchomancer or the Ruby, or maybe your Dockside, whatever it is, any red creature, you sack that to Flare, you cast Flare for free, and then you get 2 Heat Shimmers, or even 2 Jessica's Will. That's a banger too. Squee the Immortal. 1 red legendary creature goblin. You may cast this card from your graveyard or from exile. And that doesn't seem like that powerful of effect. It's one of the most broken cards ever made. Probably a design flaw. But this is used in a combo with Food Chain. And I guess we'll just explain both of these at the same time, because the combo is really Squee and Food Chain. Food Chain is 2 and a green enchantment. Exile a creature you control. Add X mana of any one color, where X is 1 plus the exiled creature's mana value. Spin this only to cast creature spells. So the move goes Food Chain. You Food Chain Squee. You exile Squee. Food Chain will give you 4 red mana from exiling Squee. And then you can recast Squee from exile for 3 red mana, netting you 1 mana every single time. So that's infinite mana. You get infinite mana with Squee and Food Chain loops if they cannot stop it. Very difficult to deal with. You have to remove the Food Chain. Removing the Squee will not make any difference at all, because you can just recast it from your graveyard or exile. That is another one of the undercover win cons that is used on a CDH table to get infinite Etali plays. You get infinite triggers. You got to be a little bit quicker about it on Arena, though, because the timer will put a stop to your infinite if your opponent doesn't scoop in the midst of it. Very annoying to sit through, but very powerful to do yourself. Rhythm of the Wild. This is a 1 red-green enchantment. Creature spells you control can't be countered, and non-token creatures you control have Riot, which means they enter with your choice of a +1/+1 counter or haste. It's just more anti-counter, counter-haste synergy. Keeps your creature spells from being able to be countered, which is a little bit better on an enchantment than it is on like a creature card like a Squelcher or a Destiny Spinner. Enchantments they don't have as much removal against them as what creatures do. So I just added this for more anti-counter synergy. But that Riot is also really undervalued because creatures coming in with haste on the turn they come down can be the difference between swinging in with lethal on that turn compared to like having to wait until your next turn. And since anything can happen on any given turn, the faster that you can get your attack off with your big stompy Timmy Tims, then the better it is for you. So Rhythm of the Wild, really good card for Gruul decks. Hulking Raptor. We're getting into our 4 mana cards now. I'm gonna move my face over here. Hold on, we'll move to the other side here. Hulking Raptor. This is more kind of on curve ramp. It's a 2 green dinosaur that has Ward 2. Really like that Ward 2 feature. And then at the beginning of your first main phase, add green. And it's a 5/3, so pretty strong when you start swinging with it. But it has Ward 2, so not the easiest target. They're going to pay extra to target this thing. And then it adds green on your first main phase. So it's very on curve ramp. You get this thing down on turn 3, turn 4, and then ideally you have like 7 or 8 mana on the very next turn. Proud Wild Bonder. And I have to say, I have grown very proud of this card. I went back and forth on it. It's too good not to include with Etali's transformed ability. So this is a 2 hybrid mana, red or green, 2 generic, 2 hybrid mana that can be paid in either red or green. Creature human warrior with trample, and then it has creatures you control with trample. You may have this creature assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. And you're probably thinking like, oh, well, that's a weird effect. How does that work? That means that when you have Etali, and let's say you have transformed Etali, right? Etali deals combat damage, they get that many poison counters, and it's 11/11. So if you just clean shot with transformed Etali, game is over. But let's say they have a whole board of blockers that, even though Etali's indestructible, you just cannot get through with enough combat damage to give them the poison counters you need. Wild Bonder says, no, wait a minute. No matter how much is blocking transformed Etali's combat damage will be assigned as though it were not blocked. So you swing with Phyrexian Etali, they block with the whole board, doesn't matter. 11 damage goes through no matter what is blocking it, giving you an instant win with Primal Sickness and Proud Wild Bonder. This is another one you might not see in a lot of high-powered Etali decks, but I think it's pretty good, honestly. I think it's a really good card that can just give you a one-shot out of nowhere, a very unexpected one-shot if you play this after you transform Etali. I would include it. I think it's great. I think it's definitely won me enough games to make it worth putting in the deck. Panharmonicon. This is a 4-mana artifact. If an artifact or creature entering causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. I learned how strong this card was with Gyruda when we played Gyruda in the last season. And Etali and Gyruda are pretty similar in their big splashy copy effects. You want a lot of the triggers. So this is just Etali redundancy. It will give you 2 Etali triggers instead of 1 when it enters, when it ETBs. So Panharmonicon. Roaming Throne, 4 generic mana artifact creature golem that has Ward 2. As this creature enters, choose a creature type. This creature is the chosen type in addition to its other types. And then if a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. You're probably going to pick Dinosaur with this. You're probably going to pick Dinosaur. So that way Etali will trigger twice on its ETB. But there's other dinosaurs in the deck too, like Hulking Raptor and like Dracosaur, Bonehoard, and Trumpeting Carnosaur. So Roaming Throne will trigger those an additional time as well. It's a very good card. A lot of people know this card and run it in a lot of decks, especially tribal decks. And it has Ward 2, so kind of like our Hulking Raptor. It's going to cost you a little bit more to try and target the Roaming Throne. All right, we're getting into our 5 mana cards here, and this card, let me sink my head down a little bit here. Bonehoard Dracosaur, 3 red creature dinosaur dragon that has flying and first strike. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. If you exiled a land card, create a 3/1 red dinosaur creature token. If you exiled a non-land card this way, create a treasure token. This card does everything. This is a very powerful card, all on its own. It has flying and first strike, and it's a 5/5, so you can it's just a beater in the air. Very good blocker too, because of that first strike. But then it also it's card advantage. You exile the top 2 cards, you can play them that turn, but it also makes a dinosaur, a 3/1 red dinosaur, and it gives you ramp with your treasure token. So you got ramp, board state, card advantage, big flying beater in the air for only 5 mana. That is an insane rate for all that this thing does. And then with your Roaming Throne naming dinosaur, you will exile 4 cards off the top of your library on your upkeep. You can just see how that can just spiral out of control super fast. So Bonehoard Dracosaur, very good card in Etali. And it is a non-legendary, so if you copy this with some of your copy effects, you will not have to sack them to the legendary rule like you would copying an Etali. So potentially you can just have 4 or 5 big Bonehoard Dracosaurs to swing in and kill your opponent. Very good card. Rionia Fire Dancer. This is one of my favorite cards of the deck. I love Rionia Fire Dancer. This is a 3 red legendary creature human wizard. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create X tokens that are copies of another creature, where X is 1, plus the number of instant and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. They gain haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. This is a game ender. This is one of the closers of the decks, because on combat, no matter what, you will get at least 1 copy of a target creature, but then you'll get an additional copy for each instant and sorcery that you've cast this turn. And I've had games where I cast like 4 or 5 instants or sorceries before combat. We go to combat, and Rionya will make 4 or 5 copies of the chosen creature. Usually it's going to be Etali to keep the Etali spin going, but it don't have to be Etali. It can also be the Bonehoard. It can also be Terror of the Peaks. It can also be a Craterhoof. I know I'm giving a little bit too much away too fast, but Rionya will make a copy of those, and then they have haste, so you can just swing in and destroy your opponent, even if you don't have the Etali to copy. But it's really fun copying the Etali. Love this card. It is one of my favorite red cards. You should definitely be playing with Rionya Fire Dancer. Terror of the Peaks. This is a 3 red creature dragon that has flying, and spells your opponents cast that target this creature cost an additional 3 life to cast. Whenever another creature you control enters, this creature deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. This is one of the most feared red cards. This card is terrifying, which is probably why it's called Terror of the Peaks. One of the other game closers for sure. It's also kind of control. It's removal in a deck that doesn't have a ton of targeted removal, because you can point that damage to any target. So you can point it straight at face if you need to close out the game, or you can point it at stuff on the board. Really good with Rionya too, because let's say you copy Terror, which is a non-legendary, so you will not have to sack them. And let's say you get 3 copies of Terror that all come in at the same time. Each of those Terrors will see the other 3 Terrors come in, and so each one of them will do, because you'll have 4 Terrors total. I'm using 3 as the example. So say you have 4 Terrors. Each Terror will see the other 3. So you'll get 15 damage for each Terror seeing the other 3 come in. And I'm not very good at math, believe it or not, even though I play Magic. So I believe you will get like 60 damage total to point at something. And that's just with 3 Terror of the Peaks coming in. If you start compounding that, you can just see how monstrous that it gets. With Rionya, another game ender. I like to think of Rionya just riding on that dragon, riding on the back of that Terror of the Peaks to just blow your competition away. Love this card. Super fun card. Thor, God of Thunder. 3 red legendary creature, god, warrior, hero that has flying. When Thor enters, exile target equipment, instant, sorcery card from your graveyard. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Thor deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to any target. This was another later include that I really wish I would have had this in here earlier. I mean, it's just a super powerful card. I've seen a lot of people play with it since Marvel came out. But it has kind of a similar effect to Terror with non-creature spells, because it'll deal damage equal to that spell's mana value to any target. So you kind of get the best of both worlds with Terror and Thor. Terror triggers off the creatures coming in, Thor triggers off the non-creature spell's mana values. And since the deck is kind of split pretty evenly between creatures and non-creatures, both of these effects are super great, but it can also be some recursion to get one of your instants or sorceries back. If you've already cast your Jessica's Will or a copy spell, Thor will exile that, and then you can replay it until the end of your next turn. So it's not on that same turn. You have it until your next turn. Very powerful effect, plus it's just a flying 5/5. So typically with Thor out, it's pretty easy to end the game. World War Hulk. This is a 3 green enchantment saga that progresses in the lore counters, and the first lore counter says the next red or green creature spell you cast this turn can be cast without paying its mana cost. The second lore counter is put 3 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control, and the third one, choose target creature you control until end of turn, double its power and toughness, and it gains trample. This is one someone suggested to me mid-season, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a great card. for Etali. I saw it a lot in Raph and Mikey decks to get Raph and Mikey down earlier, and it's the exact same thing with Etali. This you can cast very quickly, turn 3, turn 4 potential with your ramp, and then that first lore counter just gives you free Etali. You're able to just cast an Etali without paying its mana cost. But then even as it progresses, it's still very powerful effects. It will buff a creature with 3 counters, and then on the third one, it's going to double the PT of a creature and give it trample. So if you have an Etali on board, you potentially are up to 20/20 damage, a 20/20 Etali. Usually the game is over off the first effect because it's that good, but it's still just as good as it progresses in the lore counters. All right, we're at the highest mana value of the deck here. Our big game enders, the big baddies here. So first up, we got Trumpeting Carnosaur, 4 red creature dinosaur that has trample. When it enters, discover 5, and then it has an activated ability that you can pay 2 and a red to discard. It deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Another dinosaur, so roaming throne will trigger this twice. Discover 5 is a great effect. It's either you cast a non-land card with mana value 5 or less without paying its mana cost, or you can put that card into your hand. So really good. Like, you're either casting something for free or you're putting it into your hand to save for like a more opportune time. And that's off of an ETB. Discover 5. Really like this card. And then if nothing else, it's a 7/6 trampler. Again, not legendary, so if you make copies of this, you're going to get multiple Discover 5 triggers. They're all going to gain haste. You do not have to sack them to legendary rule, and then you can just close a game out with this as well, with like a Rionia or a copy effect. Even its activated ability really comes in handy when you're running kind of light on removal. You can discard it. It deals 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker. And I really added it for that planeswalker damage, because planeswalkers can be so frustrating. The Ugins and the control, the Teferis, all of that. They can be a real nuisance to deal with, very hard to interact with if you can't do direct damage to them. Disciple of Freyalis. This is a creature elf druid. It also has a backside as a land too. That you can pay 3 life to enter untapped. If you don't, it will enter tapped. When this creature enters, you may sack another creature. If you do, you gain X life, draw X cards, where X is that creature's power. Usually we're going to sack Etali with this, which seems kind of weird, but Etali, you don't really want Etali to stick around on the board. Because once it already comes in and stays, your ETB effects are over. So a lot of times you'll see in the matches, we kind of just want Etali to go away, either sacking it or you know, putting it back in the command zone from like a copy effect. So that way you can just keep Etali and keep spinning. So that's probably what we're gonna do. And when you do that, you'll gain 7 life and draw 7 cards. Pretty powerful effect. In a deck that doesn't have a ton of ways to draw cards. But the ways that it does, it refills your hand in abundance. It's not like a draw 1, draw 2 on your upkeep, like a blue effect. This is like, no, you're gonna draw 10 cards, 7 cards, 10 cards, 15 cards, however big the thing is that you sack. You're going to draw that many cards. So Disciple of Freyalis, really, really good. And it's a land, for if nothing else. If you don't need it, you have it early, you can drop it as a Chameel, the Inner Sun. This is a 6 generic mana legendary artifact that says spells you control can't be countered, and at the beginning of your end step, discover 5. So the same Discover 5 that's on our Carnosaur. You're either casting something without paying its mana cost, or you're putting it into your hand to save for a better time. It's also counterspell hate. So it will keep your stuff from being able to be countered, as well as giving you that card advantage and the board advantage with Discover 5. So this was a little bit later of an include too, but I wish I would have put it in earlier because it's just a very, very good card. Last march of the N6 green sorcery that can't be countered. Draw cards equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control, and then put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Game ender. Absolute closer of a card. I have used this. I've flipped this off of Etali. You're drawing 7 cards minimum if Etali's the biggest thing, more if you've got an even bigger thing. You're dropping all the creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. There's been times where I hit on this. I draw, 10 cards and then play 5 creatures. One of them's probably a Crater Hoof. And then the game's just over, right then and there, on the spot. It has can't be countered printed on it, so it doesn't need any of the other counter protection. It itself cannot be countered. 8 mana is a lot, but for this effect, I think it's worth it because there's not a ton of card draw, like I said. So this can just reload your hand and just slam stuff onto the board. I really like this card. Plus, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, so gotta have some Lord of the Rings in there. Crater Hoof Behemoth, probably the card that has closed out more games than any other card in Magic history. This is a 5 green creature beast that has haste. When this creature enters, creatures you control gain trample and get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. And the flavor text here, some days you wish you were fighting a dragon. What an appropriate flavor text, because this is a monster of a card. Like I said, very iconic staple. You slam Crater Hoof with even 5 or 6 creatures, the game is probably over, because it's going to give all of those creatures +5/+5, and Crater Hoof itself has haste, so it will be a +10/+10 with trample. Just a monster of a card. Look how big it is too. Look, see this little, there's a woolly mammoth underneath it that is just like an ant compared to giant Crater Hoof. That is insane. And it's non-legendary. So if you copy Crater Hoof with a Rionia, let's say you slam Crater Hoof and for some reason still don't have enough to trample over and get there, well, go ahead and make a few more copies of Crater Hoof, and then they will all enter, all see that power and toughness, add it to your creatures, and now your creatures are like +20/+20 more. Absolute haymaker, maybe the greatest haymaker ever printed. And then we have Blasphemous Act. This is an 8 red sorcery that costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield. Blasphemous Act deals 13 damage to each creature. I went back and forth on this card too. At times I took it out, and then I put it back in, then I took it out, put it in, because I don't really want my creatures dealt the damage. I don't like the board wipe effect in this deck, because for obvious reasons, like I want the Crater Hoof, I want the Rionia to make copies of stuff, but since there's not a ton of ways to deal with my opponent's stuff, and this is the only board wipe, I just ended up putting it back in because it does come in really clutch when you need it. If you're just getting stomped on and not able to keep up, this will reset the board and then give you a fighting chance. But it also is a combo with Heroic Intervention, where potentially you can cast this for 1 green/red, 3 mana total if there's enough creatures. Give yours all hexproof and indestructible, cast the Blasphemous Act, and then it's a one-sided board wipe. And for 3 mana, a one-sided board wipe for 3 mana, that is kind of worth running, because that combo right there can very likely win you the game. And the final card, Big Band Mama Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn. This is a banned card on tabletop, so you cannot play this without a rule 0 on tabletop, but it's just such an effect. There's nothing like it. There is no card like this in all of Magic, arguably. For 15 mana, the cost of a relatively new 2-story house, you get a legendary creature Eldrazi that can't be countered. When you cast this spell, take an extra turn. It has flying, it has protection from spells that are 1 or more colors, and it has Annihilator 6. And then, it's a shuffler effect, where if it's put into its graveyard, its owner shuffles their graveyard into their library. And I believe it or not, that shuffler effect has saved me in multiple games. When people do the Painter's Servant Grindstone combo, where they like try to mill you all the way out on one turn, doesn't work with Emrakul. You can do that over and over and over again, and Emrakul will just shuffle the graveyard back into the library and totally negate that. But so much printed on one card, it's incredible. It can be countered, which is very important in our Gruul deck. It gives you an extra turn, which is nothing like that on Arena, at least. There's no Final Fortune or like extra turn red spell on Arena, so this will give you the effect that all the blue decks are running. Protection from pretty much everything except for another Eldrazi colorless, like an Ugin effect. And then Annihilator 6, one of the saltiest mechanics ever printed. When this creature attacks, defending player sacrifices 6 permanents. So usually almost always, this is ending a game. And that is all of the makeup of our mana value. I'm going to go over the land base real quick. 12 mountains and 12 forests. More basics than I care to run in a high-powered deck, which is very surprising that it did as well as it did without more like duels and shock lands and pain lands. But 12 mountains, 12 forests. We got a Stomping Ground. You pay 2 life. If you don't, it enters tapped. Taps for red or green, so a shock land. Thornspire Verge adds red or adds green if you control mountain or forest. So it's basically a duel with the amount of basics that we have. Training Compound taps for colorless or can tap for red or green if it entered this turn or if you control a basic land, which we probably will given the amount of basics we have. So another duel. Ancient Tomb. Taps for 2 colorless mana, deals 2 damage to you. The best ramp land money can buy. Staple, high-powered decks, Ancient Tomb. Cavern of Souls. As it enters, choose a creature type. It taps for colorless or 1 mana of any color to cast a creature of the chosen type, and then that spell can't be countered. So protection, it's a protection piece that you probably will name Dinosaur to keep your Etali from getting countered. Command Tower taps for 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Fabled Passage, you sack this, search for a basic land, put it on the battlefield. If you control 4 or more lands, untap that land. Very good fetch land, really good fetch land that is gonna pay off if you have 4 or more lands. I like Fabled Passage. Mana Confluence, this is a pain land that you tap, pay 1 life, adds 1 mana of any color. And Multiversal Passage, choose a basic land type, and then you can pay 2 life. If you don't, it enters tapped. This land is the chosen type. So another shock land that helps you mana fix based on what color you need when you play. All right, y'all, that is all of Etali here, and like I said, it is one of the most fun decks that I've played. I would absolutely recommend playing it if you like big, splashy, crazy effects that end the game on that turn, big dinosaurs. It's just so much fun. A lot of fun if you can get through the salt of being shut down and blown out and all that, but that's what makes it fun. It's a high variance deck. It's kind of a crapshoot if you go off or if you whiff, and I like decks like that. I think they're really fun. They make for good matches. They make for good moments, and Etali had some of the best moments of any season so far, including a 22 game win streak on the last day of the season. So check that out. Check those matches out. Like and subscribe if you like magic or gaming related content. If you like seeing people crash out, good and bad. I like to say mostly good crash outs, but I get salty too sometimes. Either way, like and subscribe. Help me out. Support me here. And I appreciate y'all watching this far. And I'll see you in the next one.